Welcome to the Misophonia Podcast. This is Season 7, Episode 4. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week, I'm really excited to talk to Ross, a musician and composer based in Glasgow. Ross reached out earlier this year, and we immediately hit it off, since we share a lot of creative interests, and I also like to compose when I have time. Here we talk about everything from his quite happy childhood and getting on great with his parents, the scourge of Scottish seagulls, bad techno, terrible bouts of migraines, and a healing moment he recently had with a specific sound that was causing a recent big problem. After the show, let me know what you think. As always, you can reach me at by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com, or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at misophoniapodcast. And by the way, as always, I want to remind, leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to the show. It moves us up in the algorithms, and that helps us reach more listeners. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can go read all about it at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. I also want to mention I was contacted by the Auditory Lab at Carnegie Mellon University, and they're trying to do some research on misophonia. If you're interested in participating, you can contact auditory.lab@gmail.com. That's auditory.lab@gmail.com. All right, here's my conversation with Ross. Ross, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah, so do you want to tell us where you are, kind of what you do?
So I'm based in Glasgow in Scotland, and I work as a freelance composer, a musician, and I teach piano as well. So I've got
Amazing.
about 20 students or so.
Oh, really?
So,
These are all
yeah.
individual students, like you go to their house kind of thing? Oh,
Well,
wow.
it's it's kind of maybe like 3/4 of them are online, and
Okay.
that really came about through
Pandemic kind of.
the pandemic and just people reaching out, and
Yeah.
so I've got students kind of all over the world: Australia, the
Yeah.
Netherlands, France, New Zealand, and so on. And then I've got a handful of students that that come to my home that I teach, and then there's a
Yeah.
couple I go to theirs. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, it's a busy old life.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No, that sounds good. So yeah, you're doing these lessons, but I'm assuming you also perform. And you reached out to me, I guess.
Yeah.
What is the what's Ross's kind of misophonia situation right now? I would say, like, what made you reach out?
So yeah, I think I had let's see. So basically, maybe for the last couple of years, I've been getting really bad migraines and increasingly bad, and eventually after, oh my goodness, like having all sorts of blood tests and a CT scan and a lumbar puncture, that was fun.
Damn. Yeah.
They were like, we think it's migraines, and I'm like, but it's happening all the time. I'm like constantly, I feel like I have a bad hangover most at best, and then other times it's like throwing up.
Wow.
Anyway, so I got I eventually saw a neurologist at the start of the year, and to basically, I mean, it ended up being, in some ways, it ended up being a bit of a waste of time. In other ways, it was extremely helpful. But yeah, so he'd kind of looked at some of my results, and we had a big chat, and he said, so he says, you have a migraine brain, was how he put it, as in you were born with it, and but your main trigger is sound. And I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a musician and a composer, so I
Yeah.
output sound.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought, well, that's such a. It's the way he's kind of determined that was. I mean, I guess just from what I was saying, but also the fact that when I needed, if I have to just when it's really bad and I need to just lie down, he was saying, "Oh, do you need to like close the curtains, have a dark room?" And I was like, "No, that doesn't matter at all. I just need quiet. I need as quiet as an environment as possible."
Mm-hmm.
And then I spoke about like just basically misophonia um, and kind of spoke about how and it was sort of like as I was telling him, I was kind of the penny was dropping,
Mm-hmm.
and so when he gave me this diagnosis of chronic migraines with trigger, with sound being the main trigger, it was just like this. I kept thinking it was like the end, like spoiler alert, but the end of The Usual Suspects when the twist is revealed, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like, oh my god, this all
Yeah.
makes so much sense, and it just
Yeah.
everything. I thought, oh, yes, this explains so much.
Did you know what misophonia was at some point, or at that point, or were you describing it and then you realized what it was?
I did. So I've
Yeah.
got a good friend who maybe a couple of years ago. I'd known him for maybe 5 years, 5, 6 years, but it was only a couple of years ago that he was the first person who mentioned it, and that he
Mm-hmm.
suffers from it, and he mentioned the term, and I was like, oh, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
everyone feel that way?
Right. 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 Right.
and
Yeah.
and it really wasn't until this at the start of the year, this appointment with a neurologist, that uh this is what this is. This is just making so much sense, and it's not entirely um the uh there'll be other things like certain kind of physical uh exertion can sort of
Mm-hmm.
trigger that, but mainly, yeah, I would say like maybe 90% of when I get a migraine is related to yeah, just usually something kind of in the misophonia kind of,
And but like do you mean like the kind of the classic triggers, like the mouth sounds, or things like that, or other types of sounds?
um so, I mean, sometimes that, if it's kind of persistent, um so uh so for example, we in at the start of lockdown in 2020, we where I stay, there were seagulls started nesting
Mm-hmm.
around uh, the all over the rooftops, and I think it was partly that thing of, you know humans were inside, and you were seeing like foxes wandering down the street in the daytime, and that kind of, and I think like, the animals were reclaiming
Right. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
earth,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's what happened. And the seagulls in Scotland uh are horrific. They're mutants. They're just
Oh,
like
really?
absolute
Okay.
enormous big
Wow.
monsters, and they're loud. And this particular I mean, you might hear some during the
Yeah.
course of
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
chat. It's not been so bad so far, but that particular year, it was a cacophony, and it's screeching, and
Mm.
it was all through the night, and I had
Wow.
earplugs in, and I could still hear it, and I was just this frazzled mess,
Yeah. That
you
sounds
know.
terrible.
And so that
Yeah.
that was something that definitely, yeah, like, and when I think about it, that was when I really started noticing the migraines as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it's,
Mm-hmm.
and then since then it's been so So that's a big trigger. Things like doors slamming. If I'm woken up in the
Yeah.
night by, I've got a couple of flatmates, and one in particular really bangs his door,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it just, that it kind of winds me up, and I think the anxiety of that is then, like
Anticipatory or waiting for the next one, or just kind of like
a bit of
yeah.
both, yeah, and
Yeah.
also just a bit of
And just being
anticipatory,
wound up. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that aftermath of, like, why, this is so unfair, and just
Yes.
that
Yes.
building, if we're
Yes.
trying to let that go.
Yeah.
So you got a neighbor with their child.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was your neighbor or my child downstairs. So, so
I just realized this time of day they kind of let them out, and
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's fine, it's fine.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
I can
so
barely hear it from our end. It must be canceling out somehow. So a little bit.
good.
And so these, and then okay, yeah. So yeah, door slamming, seagulls and stuff.
Mm.
Uh, so do you think, has it kind of escalated a lot since lockdown, or is this going to be a lifelong issues for you? Have you noticed it?
I think it's escalated. I think the more the more aware I am, and the more I kind of come to sort of identify what my sort of triggers are.
Yeah.
I feel like that in a way makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe it's that kind of anticipation of it.
Mm-hmm.
But and yeah, I don't know if it's. I mean, there's definitely, I mean, in childhood, I can remember. I mean, it is just the sort of classic thing of. I can remember it was my dad, who I just, vivid memories of, particularly breakfast time, eating cereal,
Mm-hmm.
and just, yeah, the sound of his jaws, and just kind of turning in on myself, and yeah, just the usual.
Around what age was that?
Probably about 7, maybe
Mm-hmm.
7 or
Yeah.
8. That I can really remember that being. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very clear in my head. I can even sort of picture
Yeah.
sitting at the table, and yeah, that feels very clear. And there have been, I think, throughout my life, this, I feel like it's maybe kind of peaked and troughed,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, but or maybe not. Maybe I've just sort of
No, it
blacked
seems
it.
it does that with people. Like there's a common arc of, yeah, childhood, yeah, leave the house, wanes a little bit, and
Mm.
then get back into maybe the workforce, like and
Right,
then it
yeah,
comes back. I've
yeah,
heard that a number of times.
yeah.
So
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seems just like where, I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, and we were out. There was a village in yeah, just a really beautiful part of the country, and reasonably quiet. And then I eventually moved in to Aberdeen, which is the kind of nearest city to where I was, and it's sort of like where hope goes to die.
it's yeah, I've heard it's a bit of a bleak
Yeah,
city. Yeah.
yeah, just a bit. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very grey.
Yeah.
But yeah, and mad seagulls. So there were, I kind of a long lasting complicated relationship with seagulls.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just bad. So yeah, I think there are times there that I became, yeah, for sure, definitely, just extremely aggravated
Mm-hmm.
by certain situations. But I think now that it feels very much like it is now paired with migraines, or at least the risk of migraines, and so that it all, I think it was, as I say, with my friend Dan, when he first spoke to me about misophonia, it was maybe a couple of years ago, and I
Is
really,
this the visual artist you were talking about
yeah,
in over
yeah, that's
email?
right.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Dan
Yeah.
Shea, he's yeah,
Yep.
he's a brilliant visual artist and a really good friend. And I guess, like, when he first talked to me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I definitely have that, but I never really researched it. I never really kind of
Ah,
explored it any further, and I don't
yeah.
know. And it really just has been since, like, the start of this year, that I feel like, yeah, I'm kind of taking a really deep dive into it, um and in a way, it feels like, I was saying to someone recently, as much as there's so much unpleasantness surrounding it, there's also something really, I like kind of thinking of myself as like a research
Mm-hmm.
project, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, right, okay, this is how, because with the neurologist, I was sort of given this arsenal of medication, and
Oh,
I'm like, well,
okay.
this is all fine, but and I'm okay with taking medication, but there's got to be another way. There's got to be a
Yeah,
better way of this. Doesn't feel like it's really addressing.
the root.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so in the last few months, I feel like I'm kind of navigating, and um this, yeah, I don't know, just this kind of stage I'm at in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
how, um as I say, it's kind of got worse the
It
more I
often
learn.
does.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you mean the more you've learned about it, you feel like you're picking up more triggers and stuff, or your
I
anxiety,
think so.
anticipatory is coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think so. But I'm at the same time, I'm trying to, um yeah, I think, kind of find the positive, um some kind of positive angle. And I guess, like, we, in our sort of correspondence, this,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
we've kind of spoken about the creative potential for it, and that's definitely
Yes.
something that I think, yeah, really, that it feels like it's kind of next to my sort of creative agenda,
Mm-hmm.
to really,
Yeah, because I think like we talk about like most of the world, including probably us, when we first hear about it, we think it's just um, a next level irritation.
mm,
We don't what we don't. What I think when at least when I've started, obviously I've done some research in the past couple of years talking to everybody, but there are these other the domino effect of how it affects relationships, and then you can go back to your childhood all the way down to that breakfast table.
yeah, I guess, my, from the sort of creative point of view, like, I suppose, in my mind, what I keep coming back to is, um control, and just the absence of control is
Mm-hmm.
is where, or when it's most problematic.
Right, right, right,
um
right.
Maybe if I'm watching something on TV or listen to music or something, and sometimes I'll maybe apologize to whoever's in the, like, oh, sorry, that was a bit like, and the kind of thing, and I'm like, really, really sorry, but they're oblivious because it's just
For
not a
some
big
sound you
deal.
made.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
because to me it is something that I would be really kind
Right.
of a bit upset about. But I think I mean, I was thinking back to when I was studying at Aberdeen University, and I did a PhD, and it was a kind of practice-based PhD, and a kind of portfolio of compositions. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the projects that I did was it was called Orphans, and it was a kind of audio visual intermedia project where I was looking at kind of gathering so-called orphan films, and that's for anyone who doesn't know, it's usually film. I think it also encompasses photography, but
Mm-hmm.
visual imagery where that exists in the public domain because the author is unknown, and often any people in the film or photographs are unknown. So it's it has this term of orphan film. And so I was kind of going through different online archives and kind of gathering
Mm-hmm.
things, and I like the idea of, I was thinking, like, what would be the corresponding sounds to that, so the kind of
Right.
unwanted sounds, the sounds that kind of irritate us. And so it was things like, maybe wind distortion on a microphone, or like feedback and screeching, and glitches and digital
Mm-hmm.
distortion, all that kind of stuff, and then taking those sounds and making them the focal point, and expanding it into an entire kind of soundtrack to this orphan footage. So I was kind of sort of reflecting on that I don't think it was like a conscious kind of misophonia thing entirely,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there was something kind of conceptually there about unpleasant or unwanted sound, and giving that um turning it on its head, and trying to find the sort of compositional potential. And so that's kind of been coming back to me, that project, which I did, oh my goodness, maybe 2012, which seems a
Mm-hmm.
long time ago. And now, having more awareness of what misophonia is and what my own triggers are, and uh, I think I really, what I want to do now is to uh, capture those sounds that are so triggering and unpleasant, but take control of them. And so when I think when I first reached out to you, that I think I was just having this complete oh, this is amazing, this is amazing,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
horrible and amazing. And I'd like I'd I think I thought, right, there's got to be an app, there's got to be something musically related in that, and I found your podcast was the first thing I found.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
That's how you found it. Okay. Yeah.
And then and I spent so I was in Corsica,
Mm-hmm.
doing a basically to escape, and
Yeah.
from sounds that were, I was just going crazy with the migraines and the sounds.
Oh, okay.
So that's partly why I kind of decided to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'd sort of spend time just doing a lot of writing, and a lot of listening, and listening to a lot of the other interviews that you've
Mm-hmm.
done. And and so it was just like this month of kind of self
Yeah.
discovery. It ended up
Yes.
being
Yes.
amazing,
Yeah.
and there were things like, it was very, very quiet where I was staying, and it was kind of up in the mountains, uh, and beautiful, and very quiet. But um, there were certain sounds, like there was a dog would howl, and a really whining kind of howl. Quite often I would hear that, and that was driving me
Mm-hmm.
insane. But I decided to record it, and then I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna take this recording, and I'm gonna take this, and I think it was like an F sharp, because it was consistently howling in the same
Yeah.
pitch. And this is interesting. So, well, I can take this sound, and I can kind of take some ownership of it and turn it into something beautiful, like a
Mm-hmm.
kind of ambient drone, and then suddenly it's got this compositional uh potential to, that I now, this thing that's off in the distance that's
Right.
driving me crazy is now something that I kind of have and can mold into something.
Control. Yeah. Going
Yeah.
back to a little bit of control. Um, yeah. I wonder if
Mm,
that's. Because I know that is um, that is a therapeutic modality that
mm.
Dr. Jane Gregory kind of uses. She has some CBT exercises that involve actually imagining that some of your triggers are members of a symphony, and asks you to kind of conduct
Oh,
that.
wow.
Now it's a little hard to do in the middle of a trigger, like if your flatmate has slammed the
Yeah.
door, but I think there are situations when that can be kind of possible and useful. That's interesting that you kind of
Mm.
just tried it out in an organic way.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I actually yeah, I mean the other way you can do it is, as far as the opposite of ambient, and which I kind of used as kind of experimenting with some of our exercises, is throwing that sound through like bit crusher or something
Right.
distortion
Yeah,
wise, and then
yeah.
maybe trying to turn it into either a beat or kind of I don't know if you're familiar with Russell Haswell, but like he's a noise.
Ah.
I think
Oh,
he's from
maybe.
Scotland actually,
Maybe,
but
yeah.
yeah, like extreme, like a noise artist. But anyways, starting going a bit of a tangent, but yeah, no, but yeah, that yeah, that's really cool. What you're talking about is trying to take those sounds and making a compositional piece out of it. I had
Mm.
somebody on, I think Marcelo used.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah.
you heard that
I
episode, but
did, yeah.
he used triggers in actual pieces, and I think I linked to some of them in the show notes on YouTube. But yeah, he'd be a great person to maybe talk to. I think I gave him a link to
Yeah.
that little Google Doc, which
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
which we talked about. So anyways, I kind of took over that
I know,
conversation a little bit,
yeah.
um but yeah,
Mm,
that's really interesting. So as you were uh yeah, during
mm,
that month in Corsica, any
mm.
other kind of like, I don't know, self-discovery realizations?
Um, uh, yeah, that I think I need to live alone.
Okay.
I
It took you
think,
that long to figure that out?
yeah.
Most of us learned that a long time ago.
I mean, they're like my
Yeah, yeah.
flatmates are brilliant. They're really
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah.
guys. But yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, I was doing a lot of I was doing a lot of kind of soundscape recording, which I hadn't done for a long
Mhm.
time, and it was something I used to do a lot. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I felt like I don't I sort of feel like my my listening skills are, are at a pretty good level, but I felt like in Corsica that somehow they were everything felt very
Mm.
heightened, and uh I was it was just wherever I went, I'd have my Zoom
Field
H5 with
recorder.
me, and
Yeah.
my binaural mics, and all the rest of it. And there was things like, there was one night I kind of went off, or a weekend I went off traveling, exploring. And I stayed in a hotel, and there was a fridge in the hotel, and there was this it ended up, it was just like a little symphony inside the room, because there was, and it was interesting that it could have annoyed me, but like the fridge had this really beautiful hum to it. It was almost like a kind of harmony, like there were kind of two pitches happening. I was like, right, get that. That was, I thought, right, and actually, if I remember rightly, it was in the same pitch as the whining, howling dog. Oh,
Yeah.
this is beautiful, and so yeah, I think I definitely and I think also, like, compositionally, because I've spent a lot of time the last few years just writing for piano mainly, and it just, because I'm kind of finished the project that I've been working on, and I'm really really keen to get on to the next thing. I think I just felt, yeah, more kind of tuned in with the soundscape there. I mean, I don't know, in terms of self-discovery, I don't know. There were, yeah, I mean, there were definitely I think just because it was a month away and I wasn't teaching, and I was, there were maybe, like, there were certain memories and experiences that would kind of maybe sort of resurfaced, and I thought, yeah, actually, this is. I felt like I was seeing things through a different lens almost.
Since you made this migraine misophonia link and been doing this research.
Yeah.
What about, so going did were the images of the breakfast table the one that came up? And I'm curious what was, well, I mean, I'm curious in general, like, what was happening around that time? Like, what were your parents, what was your family life like at that point?
I mean, great. I had a really, really, very happy childhood, and I got on well with both my parents. But I mean, it was with my dad, and I've since I've mentioned it to him
You have
recently.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, he's we get on great, and he does take a lot of stick from my sister and I, and
what do you mean take on a lot of stick?
oh, we
Is a
just
Scottish term.
Right, we make fun of him, and
okay.
we're ruthlessly, and we're just awful children. So. But yeah, and I mentioned it to my mom. So my parents are divorced now, and she was like, yeah, it used to annoy me too, and I was like, but I wanted to kill him.
Right.
Oh yeah. But yeah, thinking back, so my mom asked, "Oh, was there anything that I did?" And I was like, I honestly can't think of anything at all. But
that your mom did. Mom was not true.
No, not at all. But my dad was there. There was some. I was thinking about my sister and I fought a lot growing up, and we get on really well now. But I do remember, like, there was a time where she got into techno in a big way, and so I had, like, I have these memories of it almost gives me a headache just thinking about it. It was the thumping kick,
right.
that muffled kick on the other side of my bedroom wall, and because she knew it really antagonized me, it was then I was like,
oh, I see.
It was like, thinking about this, it's like weaponizing sound, and so it was that we'd have terrible fights, because and it wasn't even good techno, you know. It was just
Yeah,
it
no,
was the
right.
worst.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
that was one. Um, and yeah, we'd get into, you know,
This was older when you were. I don't know how far apart you guys were in age, but
so we're like
older than 6, 7.
yeah,
Yeah.
we were 3 years apart, and this would have been, yeah, probably like early teenage years, I would think.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I just, and I mean, I can remember uh, becoming more aware, you know, things like dogs barking,
Mm-hmm.
yelping, um, like it was that persistent sound. That,
Repetitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
that. Uh,
What about at school? Were you and friends?
well, there were there's one memory in particular that I mean, I don't know that it's a misophonia thing as such, but it's I I I had these two friends that I sat together with in
Mm-hmm.
primary school. So primary school would be like up to 12 years old,
Yep.
and they they did this thing where uh, they would run like their forearms down
Mm.
the edge of their desks, and oh
Okay,
my god,
okay.
that was it was horrendous. And again, it's
Yeah.
that thing that, you know, your friends once they know that something upsets you, you know, annoys you, then
Yeah.
they'll
Oh, so they would know at that point that or they knew that that was upsetting, and then you
yeah.
told them, and then they just kept doing
Oh
it.
yeah, even more so.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I can remember sitting there with my fingers in my ears, and they were both still like,
Mm.
just the thought of it is
Yeah.
really
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and yeah, I remember that was the last year in primary school, and that is a really, that has stayed with me. Um,
Yeah.
that was, yeah, and yeah, and I guess yeah, that was a major vivid thing, and that seemed to go on
Well,
forever.
this is interesting. So, I mean, it seems like you're another one that kind of goes against kind of the I guess the so one of the prevailing histories of like something semi-traumatic happening during childhood, or
Mm.
some like rough household, where not a lot. It seems like we have super happy childhood,
Yeah.
um but potentially there are maybe some neurological root or something that may have turned on at some point. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I sometimes, you know, I kind of wonder about this apparent link with migraines, and you know what the neurologist had said about having a migraine brain and being born
Hmm.
with it. And I don't know, it's still something I'm trying to figure out, because
Figure it out. Yeah.
I didn't have migraines as a kid, I don't think, and it's
Right.
something or maybe I did, and I just assumed that was a headache, or
You see me as you were hungover or something.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just a, you know, a common
Right.
Scottish pastime.
Scotland, scotch and headaches. 12 years old.
Yeah, yeah. Tradition, but
Did it? Did it affect you? I mean, affect your career? Going into your career, maybe choosing music as a path. Did you were you extra sensitive to sound in general, and that kind of influenced all this?
uh, I I think I mean, I can remember being uh really interested in uh again, it's like the glitch or the unwanted sound that I remember being really
Mm,
interested in exploring. And I had this
mm,
first keyboard I had when I was, oh, I don't know, maybe like 12 or 13, and it was like a larger, you know, sort of model. And I remember uh it was just like a very typical, the kind of keyboard you would get, in music class in school. But I remember being really interested in like playing the highest note on like a string sound, but then there was an option where you could like increase it by an octave, and then
Oh,
you
okay.
could change the pitch bend range to like a not, and so it was glitching out the keyboard, and I was finding all these
Mm.
crazy sounds, and so I think I remember being really interested in those kinds of like how could you um yeah, I suppose almost like hack the. I suppose it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like hacking before I knew really what kind of
Right.
circuit bending and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Music. I mean, when I when I left school, I went to college in Edinburgh for 2 years, and I was yeah, sort of between the ages 16 and 18, and we had I mean, at that point, I didn't really know that I was going to do composition, but I got really interested in that. And we had this recording studio, which, so this would have been between 1996 and 98. And
Mm-hmm.
it was still tape that they had. So I got to learn how to do the whole splicing
Splice
and
and
all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff. And I loved it. And just
yeah.
playing around with the slowing the reel down and
Right.
um that kind of stuff. And there was like an Akai sampler where you could get
Mm-hmm.
like 7 seconds worth of a drum loop or that kind of thing.
Right.
um and that, yeah, I don't know, that was like a really amazing time, just playing with sound and trying to
Right.
um use the studio as a bit of an instrument in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I guess that eventually that um, kind of set me up. But and then I got a bit. I started working at a bookshop, and I was there for 5 years, and
Mm.
that I don't know. I was like, oh, earning a wage and
Yeah.
being able to buy drink and go out every
Right.
night,
Right.
and
Right.
then
Right.
I was just going nowhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, and then and then did university, and then specialized in composition, and mainly it was kind of electronic
Mm.
sound art that
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I was doing, and then bringing some of the visual elements into it. um but yeah, I mean, again, kind of during that period, I don't know that. I mean, yeah, I don't know that misophonia necessarily
Like in a
led to.
bookshop, I feel like almost a library. It must be a little bit jarring when someone drops a book or slams a door
Yeah, it was a bit
or
no,
eats
it's a
while they're
lot.
reading there.
Yeah, there were like
Yeah.
lunch times and things in the staff
Mm.
room that I can remember. Just
Ah,
oh
yes,
my
yes.
god.
Did you know that? Because I've worked at jobs where I hated being around coworkers at lunch, but I don't think I realized it was because of the sounds per
Right.
se. I just thought they were also just super boring people, which definitely was the case in many situations. But
Yeah, no, there were
so
just certain, yeah, a couple of
yeah,
people that, yeah, but it was the sounds, and yep,
yeah.
I'm just gonna go and eat somewhere else.
So what are your then? Yeah. So what I guess what are your coping methods now other than going to the mountains? Of course,
That's not
there's
so
got to be some
practical.
practical
Yeah.
day to day. Yeah.
um, yeah, so I think I think I'm still figuring that out. I got noise cancelling headphones, and uh, that's they're good. They can serve the purpose. I tried the there's the earplugs. I don't know how to say the brand, but
Yeah,
the,
there's like loops and flares and
yeah,
calm and
flares. Yeah, the ones
yeah.
with the whole
Right.
and I kind of someone had kind of pointed those out to me, um and I think this is maybe something. Maybe this is a kind of maybe a sort of self discovery kind of thing,
Yeah.
where I what I'm kind of realizing is that I get really conflicted with um you know so the notion of canceling and filtering, uh and I know that this will make this is probably going to help me, but I have this really conflicted sort of sense at the moment of part of me really wants to just experience life
Mm-hmm.
unfiltered and warts and all, but then that is usually very quickly countered by me wanting to bludgeon someone with my shoe, or just
Yeah.
so that's there's a bit of a conflict there, but I
Just a tad.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a split second decision you have to make.
Totally. But yeah, there's something about with the flare earplugs and the fact that they I mean, it's amazing just that they cut out these upper frequency or this frequency range, um and and I think that is incredible, but part of me feels like, well, I we're all going to lose our capacity to hear that frequency range the older we
Mm-hmm.
get, and I kind
Mm-hmm.
of don't really want to be,
Accelerate
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, that's something I don't know about the earplugs, but maybe I need to give them more of a try. But the noise cancelling for sure helps. And when I was
Yeah.
in the airport, oh, uh, Charles de Gaulle, Paris, uh, 2 days ago, coming back from France, and
Right.
the it was a cacophony, and
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely, it was something I was, yeah, there's maybe like a particular experience that I could maybe talk about that's kind of related to
Mm-hmm.
that, but my head was pounding, it was absolutely pounding, and it was hot,
Mm.
and we were queuing for hours, and it's just this din of voices, and so on, and but putting the headphones on and getting the noise it just felt like catching a breath. That's what that felt
Right.
like, and yeah, so I think they are a bit of a lifesaver. I think I have a better relationship with noise cancelling than I do with the earplugs. Um, and yeah, and apart from that, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm hoping that when when I really kind of delve into uh, the compositional thing of taking control of these sounds, I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's going to be, again, sort of, I'm kind of thinking of myself as a research subject. Um,
Right.
we'll see. Maybe that will be maybe it'll be beneficial.
It could make you, because another coping, well, another therapy modality is to kind of, when you hear a sound associated with something else that it is not, and so if you can kind of potentially, if you're destroying sounds, or making them more ambient, if you can then, next time you hear it in the wild, might not be the next time, but
mm,
eventually, if you can associate it with um
Mm.
a sound that you redid
Yeah.
or processed, then maybe that can kind of help you catch that breath as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, something this kind of memory that I was thinking about that's kind of related to the that sort of airport
mhm.
thing, where I'd been doing. I was working with my friend Tanya Akron, who's a dance choreographer and movement therapist. Her and I were doing a project in Aberdeen, and it would have been 2014, and uh, it, it was basically the idea was that we would develop a piece of dance. We had a guy working with us, and I was doing the sound and music, but we would do it in a kind of public space. So we would, rather
Mhm.
than work in a dance studio and then take it onto a stage, we would kind of create it and develop it, and then eventually perform it all in the same space. So we chose it was a university building, and it was it was really intense. I mean, I think it was maybe about 2 weeks that we were there, and we'd been being allowed to work in certain parts of this building. But of course, it's very you're kind of exposed to there's students going about their day and staff and janitors
Mhm.
and so on, and you're trying to do this, and they're obviously kind of curious as to
Yeah.
what you're doing, and uh yeah, so it was a really unusual, it was a interesting in a lot of ways, but we it was torrential rain for most of it, and although we were indoors,
Okay.
it was this glass roof, and it was just this cacophony of kind of white noise, uh constant, absolutely constant. And it I remember, you know, you could be sitting next to someone and talk, and you had to shout to be heard. It was just so intense. And and at the same time, I was having kind of issues with uh, my flat that I'd lived in for about 12 years,
Mm.
um, and uh, lived there alone. And but I was basically getting evicted because the building was had just fallen into total disrepair, and I was the last
Oh.
one in the building. And
Wow.
it'd fallen into disrepair because the leasing agency had allowed it to.
Yeah.
And I was woken up one night, at the same time that we were doing this residency, with rain hitting, you know, falling on my head,
Yeah.
and I woke up to just water pouring down the walls and over the light fittings and everything, and
Wow.
it was just dripping. Um, you know, just the sound of water dripping, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and basically it was about 3 days of that, and 3 days with pretty much no sleep, um, and and it just I it felt like to kind of have that experience and then to go into this building where it was just water and white
Mhm.
noise, and that um it was a particular sound that had never really bothered me um up until this experience. And I was thinking about how um it's it's like it, I guess like sound just loses its definition, and like you can, it's really hard to kind of describe the way it felt to me, but it was like nothing had an edge to it. It was just like my head felt like it was filled with cotton wool, and yeah, there was no dimension or definition, and at the same time, it just kind of felt like, you know, that life was becoming like that. That I was going to have to leave. I didn't know where I was going to live, and it was a complete nightmare. And yeah, I remember it sort of it was just a horrendous experience, and this sound is kind of the overriding thing. And then afterwards, when we did the performance, and a couple of weeks after that, I remember it was just so things were really bad, and the only way that I got the flooding in my flat to be dealt with was to kind of name and shame my leasing agency on social media.
Oh wow!
And the plumber was round that afternoon. You know, it's like, oh. But it was a really damaging kind of time, and I remember thinking, yeah, it would have been a few weeks later. I remember thinking, oh God, I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown, and then it wasn't until later I was thinking, I think I did. I think I did, because I did think I functioned for a good 2 weeks. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so unwell and just not functioning. But then maybe about 4 or 5 years later, I was doing I suppose it was like an artist retreat type thing, and it was for artists of all kinds, who were maybe at a bit of a crossroads in their career. And we it was really just the kind of, I think we're maybe 5 of us, 5 or 6, and just kind of reflecting on where we were and where we were going, and at one point we were there for a few days, and at one point during the retreat, we'd gone walking in these woods, and we'd kind of gone off in our own way and just exploring, and I remember hearing this white noise in the distance, and it was a waterfall. And so I had like this, I kind of went to it, and I didn't have a recorder with me at the time. I think I just recorded it on my phone, but I went and kind of sat and was just and it was like being bathed in white noise, and suddenly it was just amazing, and the fact, you know, the water, the noise, and it just felt like I'd made my peace with this sound that had really troubled me, and I thought, yeah, I'm okay with this now.
That's really interesting. That's it's an example of kind of a healing moment after. Obviously it's kind of traumatic when you have water pouring over you while you're sleeping.
Just a bit. So I don't know, I mean, maybe there's maybe something about that kind of reclaiming those upsetting or traumatizing sounds. And I think that's kind of maybe just what I'm trying to maybe want to explore or navigate.
I definitely feel like a lot of this is whatever age the association happens, but there's a part of you that is trying to. That's another I don't know, a beautiful thing that I've discovered talking to some types of therapists and thinkers is it's not to look at misophonia necessarily as some defect, as
Mm.
it's something that's trying to help you in good faith,
Mm.
but it's not necessary at some point after whatever time
Mm.
initially the problem happened. And I think as a child, we have a harder time um navigating what should be what should we be afraid of,
Mm.
what is a real warning.
Mm.
And I think in the case of misophonia, maybe an incorrect association is made and then sticks with you
Mm.
as you get older, where for most people
Yeah.
it goes away. But the important point I want to make is that your body that was actually thinks it's trying to help you. That's the
Yeah.
amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's not working against you. Where the outside world, they want to tell us, hey, you're a control freak.
Mm.
There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
That's why I want to give you meds.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably why you don't feel comfortable with the meds, because it's like it doesn't really get to the root of the
No.
problem, and the root of the problem might not be a defect. It might be your body acting in good faith. Obviously, you don't want it to act that way. We can try to heal that way. And
Mm.
maybe for you, for this case of the water, it was sitting next to a waterfall,
Mm.
but I think it's trying to maybe honor and uh, maybe sitting
Mm.
for a waterfall was a way for you to kind of honor that's part of you that was trying to protect you. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot
Yeah.
to explore here.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And it's.
So
I think this is it that and you were asking about uh um what can be helpful and the noise cancelling headphones and so on. But I think honestly, I think the podcast, your podcast as well, is definitely like I think like in Corsica, and since then, um, I think there is something about knowing that it's like, right. I'm going to just pick out an episode maybe at random and I
hmm
think yeah to to know just to hear other people's experiences and that um as I'm sure like many people kind of listening must have lots of moments where they're saying me too, or like
oh
saying
yeah,
out
yeah,
like
yeah,
oh
all
my
the
goodness,
time.
and
Yeah.
other things that I thought, oh yeah, definitely. Like I remember someone talking about um the just like the sort of tone and timbre of a person's voice or the way
hmm
that they
hmm
um and for sure there are uh there would be I don't know YouTubers or whatever. It's people who
Right.
I just cannot listen to, but I think
Yeah.
it's things like that I think it does feel like a bit of a lifeline, and it's it's maybe a different kind of form of uh, assistance or support, but
hmm
it's
hmm
also there's the discovery and
Right.
so yeah I don't know. I remember
You think
mm,
discovery in terms of like you're discovering new triggers, like you're kind of maybe.
yeah and things that I don't know, things that I maybe uh that I'm maybe still questioning, is this
Mm,
misophonia or is this just
right.
another one of life's annoyances?
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
some of the, there are the mouth sounds and the classic, sort of
hmm
dictionary definition type things, but just some of the other triggers that people have mentioned has just been it's just been amazing to kind of
hmm
it's like yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot. There's and sometimes it's not all related purely to sound. There's
Mm.
like I remember yeah, one is like dad um clapping his hands together and rubbing them really fast kind of thing. This sounds related to touch,
Mm.
and so Yeah, obviously, yeah, like you said, classic. Maybe 90% of people have the classic ones, but then there are these outliers which are interesting,
Mm.
but usually related to some childhood memory,
Right,
which is
right,
interesting.
yeah. I
So.
think, yeah. I mean, it's fun. Like the white noise thing as well. Is something that
Hmm.
I've kind of wanted to. I think that's one of the things I'd like to explore because I know it's something that's is you know is held to have therapeutic, like babies with colic or whatever, you play them
Right.
white noise. And um yeah, I don't know that I don't know where I'm going with that, but um
Well, there may be. I mean, well, sorry to interrupt,
mhm,
but I was just thinking because white noise is kind of like a white light. It's all the frequencies. I
yeah.
wonder if there's a way to kind of creatively kind of pull out certain colors or
Mm,
certain colors from sound, which are certain triggers. Because
yeah.
obviously every trigger is, if you put every sound in the world together, every kind of trigger together, it will be white noise.
Mm,
And if there's some
yeah.
way you can kind of like tell different stories or have each each bit of that white noise is a memory kind of thing, there could be something
Hmm.
we could turn into a creative project.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this interesting. Yeah, the white is interesting. In your case, was interesting because the white noise from the dripping was a problem at one point,
Mm,
and then it turned into a healing situation.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Uh,
it's yeah. I mean, it's I could get very very poetic about it, I'm sure, but
right.
like the drip
Yeah.
to the waterfall, it's that kind of
Right.
journey.
Right.
But it's yeah. There was this funny, during that retreat as well. Someone, one of the artists that was there was a photographer, and he did this. I don't know what I've done with it, but he was doing what do you call that? Like double exposure photos,
Yep.
and with a Polaroid camera. And oh, that was it. Yeah. So he would give us the camera. We would take a picture of something that we'd maybe encountered on that trip in the wandering in the
Mm-hmm.
forest, and then he'd take a picture of us, and he would do the double exposure of whatever the thing we'd found.
Mm-hmm.
And so my one, it was the waterfall, and I took a picture of the waterfall, and then he took my photo.
Yeah.
And the photo was amazing when it came out because it was like the waterfall was coming out of my head. It
Okay.
was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this. I thought, oh
Yeah.
wow, yeah, I could get very, very deep about and
Right.
symbolic about that, but it was a beautiful,
Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
image.
Well, very cool. We've kind of blown past an hour.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can. We'll do our own. Yeah. We have other uh, ways we can. We can
yeah, yeah.
continue this. But I think I think we covered a lot of ground here. Just kind of hear. It's great to hear about your past and your relationship with Misophonia. And yeah,
Mm.
I don't know. Anything else you want to say right now? I guess to wrap
I
up for people who are listening, other than we're gonna have to do a Misophonia podcast, of course, a good retreat at some point, and
Yeah,
for all the listeners.
yeah. Highly recommend it. Just stay away from certain animals. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think just like we kind of corresponded. I think it is this uh the creative potential for I forget the individuals' names, but some of the people who've sort of spoken about how they've incorporated. Was it Dan? No, was it Ben? Somebody, a screenwriter.
Yeah,
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 that
yeah.
was fascinating, and how he'd kind of incorporated
Ben
mystical.
Moody.
That's it, Ben
Yeah,
Moody.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was wonderful to hear, and how he had um kind of woven that into his writing and other
Hmm.
people. So I don't know. I'd just be very interested to.
Do you when you're composing, do you feel like, well, at least if you can get quiet, do
Mm.
you feel like that? At least for me, because I don't
Mm.
get to compose that much because I have other jobs. But when I get into that mode, it's very like it's like you should be doing this. This should
Right.
this should be your job. But also like it really kind of like it helps. It's almost like taking a drug. It just
Yeah.
kind of helps kind of process the misophonia. It just kind of centers everything. Do you
Mhm.
feel like that just that act, that
Yeah,
your work, when you can kind of like really calms you down?
definitely. Uh, yeah, absolutely. And there, I think it's funny because I think if I'm then taken out of it, whether it's seagulls out my window
Yeah.
or oh my god, like bin men, they're just the banging, it drives me nuts, or whatever is going on.
You've been men like
Oh yeah,
garbage
sorry,
collectors.
garbage
Yeah,
men.
yeah,
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 um, yeah, they're kind of sort of at war with them at the moment.
yeah,
But yeah, there's this the sound of the bin slamming on the garbage can.
yeah.
uh, and they have this, they shout to each other, and it's like 8 in the morning, and
Right,
anyway,
right.
when that takes me out, I feel like my anger level is higher than it would be just generally, in that it's like, oh, you've
Yes,
taken me out of this beautiful, my headspace. But
right.
yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there's I mean, it's interesting. I feel like I'm doing more and more ambient music, and it was funny. Looking on Spotify, when they do their kind of end of year, these were
Hmm.
your whatever most listened to
Right.
artists.
Your
Yeah,
wrapped, Spotify
that's
wrapped.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this last one, I was like scrolling down. I was like, oh my god, it was like number 16 until there was an actual vocalist on it.
Words.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, oh, this is that. Things are really changing here, and it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
ambient instrumental. And yeah, like just the last couple of days, I've been kind of playing around with. I've got a Shruti box, which I know people can't see this, but these things here,
Okay, okay.
that I can even play that. It's kind of, it's almost like a harmonium type
Yeah,
sound,
yeah. I know what harmonium is. Obviously, yeah. Yeah.
And so I've got this foot pedal for it, and I was just I've only had it maybe a year or so,
Hmm.
and I was just and so it's really designed for making kind of drones. I think it's originally
Yeah.
a Chinese instrument, and so I got this foot pedal, so I had that thing going on, and yeah, just absolutely blissed out. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
yeah, there's and I'm finding as well that there are certain, I'm getting really interested in really sub bassy sounds that
Okay.
that I'm finding like there are certain notes that just resonate, that it's almost a
Yeah.
physical sensation, when you play them.
Right.
And so and that's yeah, I don't know, that just by the nature of the sound, it feels grounding, whereas as
Hmm.
opposed to that white noise, which is indefinite.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, I've been getting into yeah, it is really really cathartic, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But also, I mean, throughout lockdown, I was working on an album, mainly piano compositions and arrangements of old Scottish Gaelic
Right.
folk
Right. Right.
songs, and it's funny. There's a couple of those that I can tell. I can. I mean, I can tell because I wrote them, but from
Yeah.
I can remember now that when they were first kind of written, or when they first kind of came to be, And I thought, oh yeah, some of these are like just naturally very quiet compositions, and this was this kind of
Mm-hmm.
late at night, everyone's in bed, it's lockdown, and yeah, it was just there's just something about embracing that
Mm-hmm.
that uh, that quiet
That yeah,
experience.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, I'll put links to obviously your Bandcamp or whatever else you want
Oh, thank you.
in the show notes and all that stuff. Yeah, this is fascinating. And I mean, like I said,
Yeah,
we'll continue this because I think there's lots of potential here, and hopefully people listening who are creative. I've been trying to kind of contact as many as possible. So
yeah,
if you want to join in, and if you have an idea, if you have ideas where I don't know, I'm putting together a little group of people I'm corresponding with. But yeah, Ross, thanks again for
oh,
coming on
thank
and
you,
reaching out
dear.
initially.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Yeah, again, just thank you for for this podcast. It's a lifeline.
Thank you, Ross. As always, great to talk to people interested in all things creative and potential creative inspiration from misophonia. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's easiest to just send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. You can follow there, or Facebook, and on Twitter, we're Misophonia Show. And of course, we're on Threads as well at Misophonia Podcast. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.